Imagine stumbling upon a remote forest compound, silent as the grave. The doors stand ajar, belongings scatter the floor, meals sit half-eaten on tables, and yet not a single person remains. No footprints leaving the camp, no sign of struggle, just an eerie emptiness that makes your skin crawl. Now, what if I told you this wasn't the setting of a horror film, but the real-life disappearance of a group known only as the Whispering Collective? A cult so bizarre, so secretive, that one day in 2005, they simply vanished, leaving behind more questions than answers. This is not just another cold case. This is a story of strange rituals, whispered prophecies, and a community that believed they could transcend reality itself. But the real question remains. Did they succeed in disappearing on their own terms, or did something far more sinister erase them from existence? Stay with me until the end, because the deeper we go, the darker and stranger this story becomes. And before we begin, make sure you're subscribed to Criminal Codex, where mysteries like these are uncovered and examined in chilling detail. Our story begins in the late 1990s in the misty forests of Oregon. Hidden from plain sight, far from bustling cities, a man named Elder Silas laid the foundations of what he called the Whispering Collective. He was charismatic, deeply persuasive, and carried the quiet intensity of someone who truly believed his words were revelations. Former acquaintances described him as both soft-spoken and commanding, someone who could look directly into your eyes and make you question everything you thought you knew about the world. Silas preached about breaking away from modern life, which he claimed was poisoned by greed, technology, and false gods. He urged his followers to abandon their homes, their families, and even their names. Inside the collective, they became something entirely new, souls preparing for what Silas called the Great Shift, a prophesied spiritual departure from this world into a higher plane of existence. At first, locals who caught glimpses of the group wrote them off as harmless eccentrics. They dressed simply, lived communally, and often walked through the woods in silent processions, humming soft chants that carried eerily through the trees. They called these rituals silence ceremonies. People in nearby towns would occasionally cross paths with them, always in groups, always calm, always polite, but never forthcoming about who they were or what they truly believed. By the early 2000s, their compound had grown into a self-sufficient village. Gardens, wooden cabins, a large meeting hall. Roughly 60 members lived there full-time, and yet what went on inside remained largely hidden. Those who tried to join found themselves quickly turned away unless Silas personally approved of them. Outsiders were kept at arm's length, but whispers of bizarre practices began to circulate. Former relatives of members claimed the cult had begun fasting for weeks at a time, holding chanting sessions deep into the night, and rejecting all forms of modern medicine, believing illness was just a test of spiritual willpower. But the strangest belief of all was their obsession with dimensional transcendence. Silas taught that the physical body was merely a shell, and that through devotion, fasting, and unity, the collective could one day shift together, leaving the material world entirely. To them, death wasn't an end, but a doorway to a new state of being. And September 12th, 2005, would be the day that prophecy would be tested in the most chilling way possible.
For weeks before their disappearance, neighbors reported hearing strange noises from the forest at night, low drumming, echoing chants, and sometimes a single horn that would blast through the silence like a warning call. One local hunter swore he saw dozens of hooded figures gathered in a circle beneath the moonlight, their arms raised as if beckoning something from the sky. When he tried to get closer, the group suddenly dispersed into the trees, leaving him shaken and unsure if what he had seen was even real. Inside the compound, members were preparing for what Elder Silas had long promised, the Great Shift. He claimed a cosmic alignment was approaching, something about the thinning veil between worlds that would allow the collective to pass through, together, into a higher dimension. For them, this wasn't death, it wasn't suicide, it was transcendence. Family members who tried to visit their loved ones in the weeks leading up to September 2005 were turned away at the gate. Some said the members appeared thinner, gaunt, and almost hollow-eyed, but still smiling as if they knew something the rest of the world didn't. One mother later recounted her son's final words to her before disappearing into the compound. "Don't worry, Mom. You'll understand when the shift comes." Then came the day itself, September 12th, 2005. A hiker wandering through the dense Oregon woods stumbled upon the cult's settlement. What he found would spark one of the most baffling mysteries in modern American history. The compound was silent, unnervingly so. No voices, no movement, no signs of life. The wooden cabin still had beds neatly made. The dining hall still had plates set out, some half filled with food as though dinner had been interrupted. Clothing was left draped over chairs, shoes neatly by the doors. Even the animals, dogs, goats, chickens, were gone. Not dead, not roaming, just gone. Authorities were called in, and soon police, search teams, and helicopters descended on the site. But what baffled them most was the absence of any struggle. There were no signs of violence, no blood, no damage. Every door was unlocked, every building open. It was as if the 60-plus members had simply stood up one day and walked into thin air. For weeks, search efforts scoured the surrounding forest. Dogs were brought in, but they found nothing. No scent trails, no evidence that anyone had walked away. Helicopters flew overhead, covering miles of wilderness, but not a single sign of the group was uncovered. It was as if they had been erased. Naturally, theories spread like wildfire. The first and most disturbing, mass suicide. Investigators feared they might stumble upon bodies hidden in the woods, but weeks passed with no discovery. And here's the chilling detail. No toxic substances, no chemicals, nothing indicating preparations for suicide were ever found on the compound. It didn't fit the typical pattern. Others began whispering about abduction. Could they have been taken by force, moved in the dead of night by some organized group? But again, no evidence pointed to that. No tracks of vehicles, no forced entry, no struggle. 60 people can't be kidnapped without a single trace. Then came the strangest theory of all: alien abduction. Some locals swore they saw strange lights in the sky in the weeks leading up to the disappearance. One farmer even claimed to find a perfectly circular scorch mark in his field not far from the compound, as if something enormous had briefly landed there. To this day, no one has explained it. But perhaps the most unsettling theory was the one the collective themselves preached, that they had actually transcended, that they had achieved their great shift and simply stepped out of the physical world. For skeptics, it was nonsense. But for those who walked through that eerily intact compound, the untouched belongings, the meals left behind mid-bite, the idea that something beyond explanation happened there has never quite faded. Investigators dug deep into Elder Silas's background, hoping for answers. What they found only added more layers of mystery. Silas had once been a philosophy professor, dismissed from his university for promoting radical ideas that blurred science and mysticism. He had a history of mental health struggles, but also a charisma that drew people in like moths to a flame. He published strange pamphlets about dimensional gateways and the thinning of the veil, ideas that became the foundation of his cult's belief system. The FBI eventually joined the case, treating it as a possible mass disappearance or interstate abduction. But years passed, and no evidence ever surfaced. No bones, no clothing, no single confirmed sighting of a member. It was as if the Whispering Collective had truly been swallowed whole by the forest, or something beyond it. Even more haunting? In the decade that followed, scattered reports began to surface. A gas station clerk swore she saw a man matching the description of a member, standing silently by the pumps in a rural town 2 states away. A trucker claimed to pick up a hitchhiker who said she had once lived in a place where voices whispered in the trees. These accounts were never verified, but they only fueled the legend. And so the disappearance of the Whispering Collective remains one of the most bizarre and chilling unsolved mysteries of the 21st century.
The years passed, but the whispers never stopped. Local townsfolk in Oregon spoke about the collective in hushed tones, like a curse no one managed to call by name. Hunters refused to venture too close to the abandoned compound, claiming the place carried an unnatural stillness, as if the forest itself remembered what had happened. Some even said they heard faint chanting at night, carried by the wind through the trees. Journalists and true crime investigators returned to the site multiple times over the years. They described the compound as frozen in time. The same plates still stacked in the dining hall. The same rotting furniture in the cabins. The walls of the meeting hall still bore faded inscriptions, cryptic phrases painted in red pigment. One, chillingly, read, "The shift is not the end. It is the beginning." When investigators tried to follow up on the missing members' bank accounts, social security numbers, and IDs, they found nothing. No credit activity, no applications, no travel records. It was as though every one of them had simply vanished from the grid at the exact same moment. And remember, we're not talking about 1 or 2 people disappearing. This was an entire community of more than 60 individuals, families, children, couples. How do so many lives disappear without leaving behind even the smallest ripple? The FBI labeled it as one of the strangest collective disappearances in modern U.S. history. They released files years later, heavily redacted, that suggested the case remained open but inactive. In other words, unsolved and cold. But true crime researchers and armchair detectives refused to let it go. Online forums lit up with theories. Some argued the cult may have orchestrated a mass relocation, burning IDs, abandoning their possessions, and slipping away into the wilderness, or even overseas. They cited parallels to other groups in history who staged disappearances to avoid law enforcement or unwanted attention. Others pointed to a more sinister possibility, that the cult had been infiltrated or silenced by an outside force. Government experiments, black ops, secret relocations, conspiracies ran wild. One theory claimed Elder Silas had struck a deal with a shadowy organization, trading the cult's loyalty for protection and in turn erasing them from public records. Far-fetched? Maybe. But when no better explanation surfaces, even the wildest ideas start to take hold. And then there's the theory most unsettling of all, that the Whispering Collective did exactly what they claimed. They transcended. Believers point to the eerie lack of physical evidence. No remains, no signs of departure, just absence. Could it be possible that this group, in their own strange way, achieved something science can't explain? Over the last 2 decades, the legend of the Whispering Collective has only grown. Paranormal investigators, cult specialists, even UFO researchers have each claimed the case as part of their field. For some, it's evidence of human vulnerability, the way charismatic leaders can push people toward extremes. For others, it's proof that the world holds mysteries far stranger than we're willing to admit. And here's the eerie part. In 2019, a hiker passing near the old compound discovered something strange, nailed to a tree. It was a fragment of parchment, weathered and nearly unreadable. Scrawled across it were words that seemed to echo the cult's teachings. The shift was successful. You will not find us where you are looking. Was it an authentic message left behind by a member, or simply a hoax planted by someone obsessed with the mystery? To this day, no handwriting analysis has been able to confirm its origin, but the timing and the location only deepened the sense of dread. So where does this leave us now in 2025? Nearly 20 years after the Whispering Collective's Vanishing Act, we are no closer to the truth than investigators were on day one. Some families have declared their missing loved ones legally dead. Others still hold out hope, believing one day they'll return. And then there are those who believe they never truly left, at least not in the way we think of leaving. Because that's the terrifying question at the heart of this mystery. Did the Whispering Collective walk away willingly? Or were they taken by something none of us can fully comprehend?
The more you peel back the layers of this case, the stranger it becomes. Think about it. 60 people don't just vanish overnight. They had homes, families, connections, lives outside the compound. And yet every one of those ties seems to have been severed cleanly, deliberately, as though someone or something wanted the Whispering Collective erased from history. We've looked at the theories. A mass suicide, yet no bodies. A relocation, yet no records. Alien abduction, supernatural transcendence, shadowy government cover-up. Each theory raises as many questions as it answers. And that's the unsettling truth about this case. It isn't just about what happened to a cult in the Oregon woods. It's about the limits of what we can know. Because when we strip it down, here's what remains. A leader who promised enlightenment through separation. Followers who gave up their lives in pursuit of something greater. And an ending so abrupt, so total, it defies explanation. Did Elder Silas orchestrate the greatest disappearing act in cult history? Or did he lead his people into something none of us were meant to understand? What we do know is this: the Whispering Collective has left behind a silence louder than words. Their abandoned compound, their rituals, their warnings, they all echo like a ghost story told around a fire. And maybe that's what unsettles us the most. Not knowing. Not being able to close the book. Because when human beings vanish without a trace, they leave behind a vacuum. And into that vacuum rushes fear, speculation, obsession. And so the mystery endures. True crime forums still debate late into the night.
paranormal investigators still camp out at the edge of the compound, hoping for a glimpse of something otherworldly. Families of the missing still light candles every year on the date of disappearance, praying for answers that may never come. And you, watching this right now, you can feel that unease, that chill, because you know this isn't just a story. It's a reminder that sometimes the truth doesn't want to be found. So I'll leave you with this final thought. What do you think happened to the Whispering Collective? Did they walk away into the shadows of obscurity? Did they meet a fate too dark to imagine? Or did they, in some unimaginable way, achieve the transcendence they were chasing? Drop your theories in the comments below, because this is a mystery that thrives on curiosity, speculation, and the willingness to confront the unknown. And who knows? Maybe one day the missing pages of this story will be revealed. Until then, it remains one of the most bizarre, most haunting, and most chilling disappearances in modern history. This was the story of the bizarre cult that vanished without a trace. Thank you for watching Criminal Codex. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell so you never miss another deep dive into the world's darkest mysteries, and share this with someone who loves unraveling the unexplainable. Until next time, stay curious, stay cautious, and remember, some doors once opened can never truly be closed.